They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. This is the good news for the people of God, and we say, thanks be to God. I've always been a prolific crier, never had to practice, just came naturally. If you know me well, you won't find that surprising. If you don't, you may be shocked to find that someone who projects such a tough and intimidating exterior is secretly a crybaby. It was in the defense of the illusion of that tough and intimidating exterior that I hid my crying away for so many years. Even after I learned that it was good for me, crying releases hormones and endorphins that heal the body and make you feel better. And so I just incorporated it as part of my daily emotional care routine, my private daily emotional care routine. I was distressed when I read a new study this past week that suggests all the benefits of crying are only unleashed in your body if someone else witnesses your crying. In retrospect, it turns out I did my teenage years entirely wrong. Jesus is a witness today. In Scripture today, it's the first time he goes into a synagogue in the Gospel of Mark, but instead of beholding what we might see as healthy, touchy-feely community crying, we might see in our church on any given Sunday, Jesus witnesses the crying out of a possessed demoniac. Let's stop right there, because many of us are uncomfortable with these stories of Jesus casting out demons, and with good reason. Especially those who are part of the LGBTQ community know that these stories have been used to vilify particular subsets of people. This wouldn't have been true, though, for the first audience of this gospel. For the Jewish audience of the Gospel of Mark, they would have known that being unclean, like the spirit is in the story today, was just a part of life, an unavoidable part of life. There were certain things that human beings did all the time, like menstruating or handling the body of a deceased relative, traveling, eating certain things that just made them unclean. Being unclean from time to time was just something every person had to deal with. In that way, being unclean is much less like being evil and much more like being afraid. Fear is an unavoidable part of our lives. And if you don't think that fear comes in spirit form, I just point you back to the terrorist attack on our nation's capital on January 6th. That crowd certainly looked like a spirit possessed them. That crowd looked like they were driven by fear. And that's not to excuse what they did. It's simply to say the power that fear can have over us, the power that fear has to make us do terrible things. Fear, true fear, drives us first and foremost only for our own self-preservation. The unclean spirit in Scripture today is not harmless. It has possessed a man, robbed him of his own autonomy, of his own body. But if you don't think that spirit is driven by fear, listen again to the question the spirit asks Jesus, have you come to destroy us? Have you come to destroy us? But Jesus hasn't come to destroy the spirit. Because Jesus knows better. Because Jesus is fully human, and so Jesus knows that living among fear is what it means to be mortal. And Jesus is also fully divine, and so he knows that perfect love, while perhaps not destroying fear, casts it out. Casts it out, and it's not a once and for all kind of thing. Jesus engages in this battle with fear around him for the entire gospel, according to Mark. Jesus engages with the fear around him just like we do every day. I'd be lying if I told you that as of late, I haven't struggled with fear. Fear of what's to come with this vaccine rollout, fear of what it will mean when people stop being as careful as they have been, fear of this spirit of hate and white supremacy that is just so endemic in our national consciousness, fear even of the destruction of our planet. And that fear isn't going away anytime soon. And so we need to decide what we will do with the fear that is among us. Will we double down on fear? Will we give in to the propensity to doom scroll on social media and to rampage inside of our silos filled with like-minded people who only stoke our fear more? Will we just ignore the existence of fear altogether and find every possible way to tune out and distract ourselves so that we never have to experience fear again? Or will we cast the fear out? Will we cry the fear out and risk being vulnerable enough to say to one another, I am afraid, or I am afraid too? Will we be brave enough to share our fear with one another so that we are accountable to one another in love rather than beholden to the fear that we carry alone? Beloved, I hope in these days and weeks to come that we will live as people who preach and profess and speak into the truth that perfect love casts out fear. I hope that in these days and these weeks to come, we will be a community of people who hold space, be it virtual space, for people to share their fears and their tears and whatever else it is that we live with as fully mortal human beings. And I hope that we will be brave enough to choose love, and that in so doing, we will find that fear has no more power, or at least not too much power over us. Thanks be to God.